You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Hello, I'm Stephen Willis from the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, and I am joined by the Florida football scout, Brian Smith, to talk about all of the great stuff that is coming up. Before we get started, though, I do want to let you know that LinkedIn is the college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked On Podcast Network. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. Now, Brian, a lot of interesting stuff that has happened over the course of the week. We talked last week that we shouldn't forget about high school recruiting, and lo and behold, Jarcoby Hopson committed to Ole Miss football over the week. Jarcoby went to the same high school as Cam Franklin. Lake Cormorant is coming into quite a hub, quite a feeder system for the Ole Miss Rebels. What do you know about Jarcoby?
Saw him at Under Armour. That's a kid that's got more length than I thought he would. You know how kids are listed at one size, and then you see him, they're like, not so much. He's pretty darn long and explosive. Ran the hoop well, did a good job with his ability in space. And I think he could play outside, inside. You could use him as a blitzer. He's kind of a modern linebacker personified. So, I don't know what's going on at Lake Cormorant, but they've got some good players.
Yeah, I think they got another one coming in 2026 as well. But Jarcoby, I think he's tailor-made for the Huskier star, that outside linebacker hybrid linebacker safety position. I think he has the athleticism to cover. The comp that I would give him, he is similar stylistically, maybe not as good as a Tony Connor was when he was at South Panola back in the day.
Well, that being Connor in any way, shape, or form would be a pretty good start. But the length, again, gives you options. If for whatever reason that didn't figure itself out, he could be a pass rusher on third downs, and he could eventually grow into an inside backer. He's got plenty of room for weight. I'm guessing 230 is not out of the question at some point. So they're looking at a player that can do a lot of different things, and he'll play special teams at Ole Miss pretty much from the time he gets to Oxford. No doubt in my mind about that. Final point on him is just speed. He's a typical Mississippi high school football recruit. He's got plenty of speed, so that's going to help too.
What's going on in the high school recruiting thing that we're maybe not paying attention to? We obviously are all paying attention to Jarcoby Hopson, but we're all focused on the transfer portal. What's happening in the high school market right now?
I think more than anything else, it's just we're on the slight lull before the explosion, because a bunch of visits are going to take place over the next few weeks, unofficial and official. Then the back half of May is going to be a gazillion of them. So I think myself included, I paid attention far more. It was just a second ago looking at transfer portal stuff than anything else, because we're right in the middle of that. That doesn't end till the end of the month. We got 5 more days, 6 more days, something like that, whatever it is. I believe that people are going to miss on it. Individual players, there's not many guys committing right now because of the portal. They want more information to be about them. And you got the draft this weekend, et cetera. So it's a little quieter there, but that'll change in about a week.
You know, to change the subject to the portal, it's kind of interesting because the transfer portal is much like a lot of stuff when it comes to scouting. You have a really good idea and a really good strategy, and you might have everything all figured out, and then another player becomes available, and that completely changes the calculus and equation.
That's the point. You don't know when guys are going to get in. And you don't know why. The research is one thing for a college coach to pick up the phone. He can call one of his buddies at that school and give an idea. Hey, this is what we liked and didn't like about him. He was a troublemaker. I don't get that information the same. I might know the same person, but I'm not going to get the same story all the time. So the portal, it giveth and it taketh away. So be careful for what you ask for, because sometimes you get a player, then another guy comes along that you would have rather had. So there's a lot of really difficult decisions, whether you're Ole Miss or another school. And every day it's different, man. Like both the defensive tackles for Michigan State are in the portal. Those are guys that are coveted. The kid that was a freshman All-American at TCU started at nose guard in the national title game as a freshman. He's in the portal. Some of these guys we just didn't see getting in, and then there they are. So make sure you know what you want before you get it.
Yes, and thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. When we come back, we will talk about one such player that Brian was just talking about that has completely changed the calculus in the Ole Miss running back room potentially. We'll talk about that guy. But first, I want to let you know, we've all been there either as a fan or a player. It's halftime and the scoreboard, and it's just not looking good. You're feeling low, but you're not sure if your team can pull out the win. That's when you dig deep, lift your head up, and say to yourself, time to get back in this game, pull off some bank heist, and take as much of my friend's money as I possibly can. That's right. The smash hit mobile game, Monopoly Go, lets you compete with your friends to get the most riches and the biggest empire. It's the Monopoly you love, but on the phone, anytime, anywhere, with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress with your buddies. There's so much to do. Countless dynamic Monopoly boards. You can play on the moon, I believe. Make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. Charge other players rent on your iconic properties, and you can even work with your friends to crack open community chests and in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So go back out there, put on your game face, and download Monopoly Go, now free on the App Store and Google Play. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay's Guaranteed Fit, also, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay's Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Do you have to turn down the volume with all of that screaming and shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 streaming channel programmed for you each and every single day to bring you the biggest stories without all of that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, Brian, one of the players that has just completely changed the calculus and everything that was going on. I did a show literally this week talking about how Ole Miss replacing Quinshon Judkins, they were going to do the money ball thing. They were going to replace him in the aggregate. You were going to have a running back between two or three backs. You were going to have 300 carries, 1,200 yards, and 15 touchdowns. That was their goal. And you saw that different types of running backs were being recruited to kind of fill that gap as well. Well, an interesting player got into the portal just a couple of days ago in Dylan Edwards. And Dylan Edwards is a Dexter McCluster type running back. If you remember what Dexter looked like, yeah, he is that type of back. And Ole Miss being interested in that type of back, you can see how that would work. But that changes the equation a little bit to where maybe you have Ulysses Bentley, who originally was before that speed Jerry and Ely plus type running back. If you were to go get a Dylan Edwards, all of a sudden it takes Ulysses Bentley, moves him into that secondary role, and Henry Parrish becomes a thumper a little bit in the system. It's interesting. What type of player is Dylan Edwards?
I think he's as much, if not more, a slot receiver than he is a running back, because his ability to make guys miss in space and naturally catch the football makes Dylan one of the more unique players that I've seen the last couple of years. And I also think that he's just another weapon that Wayne can rotate in and out of the offense, especially those hot days in Mississippi early in the season. Having guys that got plenty of juice, man, that would be a really dynamic guy in the offense. You could do jet sweeps, reverses, and even just play fakes to set up other plays for anybody that, I mean, all their skill guys are good, so I don't want to really single anybody out, but he would be another weapon that is really athletic in space that really makes teams uncomfortable at the very minimum. So another toy, if you would, for Mr. Kiffin.
Yeah, if Lane Kiffin got this toy, because I think Dylan Edwards is an excellent player. He has all kinds of ability, but he's a luxury player. A player that needs a running back is probably not going to recruit him to be a primary running back. But if you have that already and you're looking for offensive weapons, Lane Kiffin sees a Reggie Bush type player that he can put in his system and figure out different ways to use him. And I think that Lane Kiffin and Dylan Edwards is probably a better fit than anywhere in the country for this young man.
It's hard to really imagine many play callers not being at least a step or so below, maybe a couple of guys, but Dylan is looking for something where he can be at a competitive level, et cetera. So that narrows the field. Kansas State's a good program, and he might go there because he's from Kansas, for those of you who don't know. But Ole Miss is attractive. They're sitting in the top 10 in the polls, and he would be in an offense he'd be featured. I'd be surprised if he picked Kansas State, honestly.
And can you imagine, and I'm just sitting here and looking at what's going on, and you have Trey Harris on the outside. You have potentially Deion Smith, who is an excellent player as well on the other side. Caden Prieskorn at tight end. Dylan Edwards as a seam threat up the middle for teams that want to play different styles of defense. How do you stop that? It's almost like Tecmo Bowl where you're just trying to guess. I don't even think you would be able to double Trey Harris in that scenario.
You could, but it would put a lot of pressure on guys to be really good in their area. One-on-one in the SEC is not friendly if you don't know what you're doing. So especially later in the game when you're tired, if Ole Miss rotates guys like I think they would, and he comes out onto the field with 5 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, you better have a deep defense because nobody wants to chase the rabbit late in the game, and that's what he is. He's a jackrabbit.
Yes, and if you want to look at his highlights on Huddle, like we've all saw what he did at Colorado, but go back to his Huddle highlights of his senior year. Him basically embarrassing Kansas high school football is what
it was bad.
Yeah. It was quite something else. Like this morning on my show, I played a little bit of those Huddle highlights for what's going on because it reminds me a little bit. He's not quite there. I am never going to put high school video onto what Noel Devine did in high school. That is number one bar now. I think On3 is doing like a ranking of their top 10 high school videos, and Devine was number 3. And it's like, no, Noel Devine was number 1. It was one of those situations with his video. We cut on Sunshine Preps because that was back in the Sunshine Preps days, and just sat there and watched it over and over again with our jaw open. And it was just freakish. Now, Dylan Edwards did a little bit of that, not all of it. There was a lot of like open field type stuff, but he did make people look silly.
Yeah, I'd imagine that Dylan Edwards is probably about as good a comparison as you're going to get. I don't know if anybody's as shifty as Devine, but Dylan's a little bigger, a little stronger too. So great comparison and a player, again, that I think would be really good in Lane Kiffin's system.
Thanks again for making Locked On Ole Miss your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. Brian Smith, the Florida football scout. What do you got going on this weekend, bud?
Well, I'm going to probably head over and watch a little football at the Elite 11 in Georgia. So it's nothing new, man. Just checking out football as much as I can.
Yes. Hey, it's always a grind and it's always fun, right?
That's right.
All right. Take care, buddy. We'll see you next week.
Take care.